This giant was shot back in 2014 by Mark Hammer. So Mark was hunting with his father down in southern Ohio like they always do for the rut. And he was down there for a couple of days, wasn't having much luck. So he decided on November 3rd after the afternoon hunt to drive back home to Huron County, Ohio, to hunt a farm that's close to his house. So Mark got up the next morning. He got up about 2 hours early to get out. It was windy, it was a little warmer than normal, but he was excited to get out into the woods. Now this patch of woods is only about 40 acres. There actually is a couple other guys that he knew that could hunt the property. So this being during the middle of the week, he knew that there was a better chance that nobody was going to be in there. So Mark gets out there, he gets ready to go. He wants to be in his stand an hour before daylight. So as he walks in there, he goes by a tree about 15 yards and rubs a little bit of Evercalm on it. And then he gets up into his stand about an hour before daylight. So as Mark's sitting there, he can start hearing a little bit of noise, just the wood starting to wake up. Then right after daylight, 6 does came walking in. And the does came in, walked by him about 30 yards and actually bedded down right there. So he knew that was a good sign when you have does bedded down right next to you, during the rut. Well, then 2 little bucks started coming in. They walked in. They didn't bump any of the does, but they passed on through. So like I said, he had his confidence pretty high with all the movement that has already happened. So after those bucks came walking by, Mark decided that he was going to, start rattling in to see if he could get one of the bigger bucks up. So Mark created this system called the Antler Action Rattle System, which is a pretty cool rattling call that actually went on the base of your tree, and there's a string that came up. So as you're standing in your tree, you can pull the string, and it would make rattling antler sounds down by the base of your tree. So it's a little more realistic than, a buck coming in hearing antlers up into the tree. So Mark hit his rattle system at about 7:20. And he sat there and waited. Mark was going to be able to hunt till about 2 o'clock or so because he had to pick up his son at school, and he was all ready to go all day long because the previous year he shot a real nice 9-point in this same little patch of woods, but it wasn't until afternoon. So Mark hits the call and he sits there and waits, and all of a sudden he sees a deer come walking in. Now this deer was walking down this trail and he got to be about 80 yards away. He could tell that it had a really, really big body on it, but he couldn't tell what deer it was. Well, that trail then split at 50 yards. It was either going to walk by right where the does came in at 30 yards, or it was going to walk by another trail, which would be 10 yards from his stand. So as it got to 50 yards, he could tell that this definitely was a shooter. So the buck then took the trail that was going right by his stand. Now there was only one tree that he could actually pull his PSC bow behind without the buck seeing him. So he drew at 40 yards. The buck started walking in. When it got into a couple of his shooting lanes, he tried to stop it and it would not stop. So the buck kept coming and Mark shot it while it was still walking at only 10 yards away. He knew he made a great shot, and the deer spun around and it ran down and it crossed a creek and it actually died right there. Mark could see it from his stand. He could see the belly laying there. But as you could tell, that's when all the emotions started coming out. So he texted his dad that he shot a giant, and his dad was still hunting down in southern Ohio. And he finally got himself composed after about a half hour. He said he didn't even remember putting his bow up. He tried it numerous times and it was shaking so much. But Mark got down out of his stand, and he actually walked over to the arrow and was going to track the deer. Even though he saw the thing laying there, he still wanted to track it. But I'm sure all those emotions going on, I don't know what I would do at that time, but he tracked the deer across the creek. Now, he was waiting for there to be a little bit of ground shrinkage. When he texted his dad, he said, I think it's a booner, He thought it was a 180, 190-inch deer, and he walked up on it, and it was a lot bigger than he even thought. So this buck is just massive, okay? This buck scored 254 1/8 inches for Boone and Crockett. It had main beams that were just over 29 inches on one side and 28 on the other. There's 23 scoreable points. There's 10 on the right side and there's 13 on the left side. So this deer actually is on record as the largest buck that was shot in North America in 2014. Now, Buckmaster's BTR score also scored it at 254 0/8. So just an absolute giant. Mark's a great guy to get to know. I've got to know him over the last few years, but really excited for him. Awesome deer to see up close in person. Just a cool buck.